I wake up from my nap to like 6 missed calls, 2 missed FaceTimes from Daniel.
Very anxiety inducing.
Him being like, I need you to pick me up off the side of the highway. I underestimated how much time I had. And I was like, oh my goodness.
It's like there's something that's like deeply like implanted in the human psyche that wants to self-protect. And so anything that feels like, oh, are you saying I'm not good enough?
Yeah.
Or are you saying that I'm not the person who I want to be perceived as?
Yeah.
It's almost like you'll do whatever it takes to protect that or defend yourself.
When people think of like fights or conflict in a relationship, it's like a scary thing or viewed as a bad thing.
Yeah.
But really what it could be when you get out the other side of it is a chance to know your significant other more and to know how to love them deeper. So today we're gonna talk about fighting. Fighting with your significant other. To those that say, I never fight, it's coming.
And also, like when we say fight, it means conflict,
like
argument.
Argument. We're not picturing like yelling and slamming doors or anything like that.
Every relationship has disagreements. I think it's important to talk about what fighting is and how to avoid it, how to do it well, so on and so forth. So we're going to talk about 3 observations and I guess things to keep in mind when it comes to disagreements and fights that will strengthen your relationship.
Yeah, how to like healthily walk through them and come out the other side better.
Yeah. The first thing is your perspective sets the temperature.
Okay, so what this means is that the way you're viewing a situation really can change the outcome of it.
And it could also affect whether it is a conflict or not.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I have a good example about this. The other day, Daniel went on a run. He loves to run. And he was like, I'm going to run to Costco and get my contacts. Yeah. When he said that to me, I was thinking, can you just go on a run and just drive there? Because that will take so much time and blah, blah, blah.
And I overestimated how long my Costco visit would be. They had to measure my eyes. They had to test the contacts. I was like, guys.
He just wanted to pay for them, pick them up and go. But they were not
we don't need to do all this.
So
anyways, it took like 25 minutes at Costco.
When he was running, like he was planning on running there and back, so I wasn't thinking about like picking him up or anything like that. When he was doing that, I was napping because the night before we had a really late night. I'm pregnant, I need my sleep, blah, blah, blah. I wake up from my nap to like 6 missed calls, 2 missed FaceTimes from Daniel.
Very anxiety inducing.
Him being like, I need you to pick me up off the side of the highway. I underestimated how much time I had. And I was like, oh my goodness. And because the reason why it was such a rush is because we had an appointment we had to get to at 2 p.m. So then I was like, oh, I guess I have to pick him up. So I'm like groggy, get up from my nap. And then I get in the car to go pick him up. And like, honestly, I'm like annoyed because I feel like I was brought into his bad planning. And so I was just kind of annoyed that I had to come pick him up. And as I was driving to the spot on the highway that he was at to pick him up, I was thinking to myself, like, oh, I kind of just want to be like cold to, like I wanted to be cold to you and I wanted to show you that I was annoyed.
Yeah, and at this point, I see our car approaching me. I see my beautiful wife in the car. I had no idea that she would have been upset.
Yeah, so like, but I by the time I saw him, I had made a decision. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be cold to him. Instead, I'm going to like make light of the situation and joke about it because it is kind of funny. Yeah. Like I'm picking him up off the highway. He's so drenched in sweat. Like
long run.
He did such a long run. And so instead of being like cold and annoyed and showing him that I'm annoyed, I like picked him up and I was laughing and videotaping him coming into the car. He said, we gonna run this town tonight. And I was like singing, we gonna run this town tonight because because I'm like, he literally ran like the whole town.
Shout out to bad girl.
He ran like 18 kilometers. Anyways, so that's just like, I feel like an example of where like I could have really brought both of our moods down. Yeah. And it was hard.
It would have changed the afternoon.
Yeah, it would have.
Yeah, the vibe of it.
Yeah, and you would have been like, what's wrong? And then you would have been like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it just would have been like tension. And I'm so glad I chose to instead like be like, this is funny, and I can make a fun moment out of this. And that's not easy for me to do. Like, I don't know if it sounded easy in the story, but it's not. It's really hard for me because in my mind, I'm like, I have a right to be annoyed.
Thanks
like,
for being so vulnerable.
But like, yeah, so it's not easy for me to flip that switch.
No,
but looking back, I'm like, I need to do that more often because there's so many opportunities for me to do that that I don't take.
And I think there's so many times where we feel as if, again, like, it's not fair because it wasn't fair of me to underestimate my timing and then ask you last minute to pick me up.
Yeah.
You were trying to not, anyways, all these different factors. But it's so important to be like, oh yeah, this isn't fair. But how can I look at this differently? You took a situation that could have started a conflict, but instead you made light of it and it was funny.
Yeah.
And then I think that, like, say there's a situation where you are short with me, or there's, I guess, a conflict that we find ourselves in where I feel unfairly treated.
Yeah.
I could go like, oh, I don't deserve this. I need this. And almost come at it from like a more entitled perspective. But instead I could like laugh it off or have the perspective of, oh, she's having a tough day.
The last thing I need to do is add to it.
Or she's pregnant. She's growing a life.
Yeah.
There's so much more that is going on in that my role can be, instead of like exacerbating this like small situation, I could just laugh it off or remember that, oh, she's doing so much, her body's going through so much, so I'm going to extend grace. So I didn't have an excuse, but you have an excuse. And for me, I can go like, I can almost step back and alter my perspective so that, one, it makes the conflict a bit more of a, okay, we're a team solving this conflict together, or because of my perspective change, it doesn't start a conflict like at all. Yeah.
And I think too, just realizing like, it's important to remember that when you get married to someone, the two of you become like family. Like, that's your immediate family. And I think the expectation of family is that you're going to come in clutch for each other.
Yeah.
And because that's the person you ask, like when you're in trouble or you need something or whatever, like last minute, like you don't worry about inconveniencing your family.
Yeah. So perspective is so important.
Yeah. It can change the tone of the rest of your day, the rest of your week.
Yeah.
The tensions that you're having or not having.
Yeah. So as you engage in conflict, just ask yourself, is this a hill that's worth dying on? Or can I move along as if it didn't happen?
Yeah.
Or maybe address it in a way that's not like aggressive or
it's more relaxed,
offensive or
laid back.
Yeah.
That's good.
What's the next one?
The next one is your ego is your biggest opponent.
Yeah. And why we think this is important, especially when you're thinking within the context of conflict and fighting, is sometimes you're not even fighting the other person. You're fighting to protect your ego. Like, you're like, either I want to win, or I feel like this person made me feel small.
I feel misunderstood.
Or I want to self-preserve. I think there's this like self-protective mechanism that sometimes comes in when we feel like we're being attacked. Or we feel like we're entering into a 1v1. But it's so important to recognize that the more you can almost like not fight to protect your ego, but fight to protect your relationship as a whole, the better footing you have in approaching the conflict in a way that's fair, in a way that considers the other person, in a way that results in a win for you as a team, as a couple, as opposed to just you as an individual.
Yeah, and it's so funny that we try to protect our ego so much with the person that's closest to you.
Yeah.
Because really, what is there to protect? That person knows you through and through. That person loves you, like, despite all your flaws and shortcomings that they already know about, and they've still chosen to love to you, still chosen to commit to you. But it's so funny to me how we still, like, no matter how security is in a relationship, we still go to this protection mode.
It's almost like there's something that's like deeply like implanted in the human psyche that wants to self-protect. And so anything that feels like, oh, are you saying I'm not good enough?
Yeah.
Or are you saying that I'm not the person who I want to be perceived as?
Yeah.
It's almost like you'll do whatever it takes to protect that or defend yourself. but it's so important to recognize when ego is coming into the conversation, because when ego comes into the conversation, oftentimes we become way more irrational than we would be if we're just having a conversation with the person we love. But when ego comes in, it's like, oh, I need to be viewed as strong, so I'm going to make the other person feel weak. Or I need to be viewed as a winner, so I have to make the other person feel like a loser. But it's so important to, like, time and time again, check your ego and make sure you're not fighting to protect your ego, but you're fighting to protect your relationship.
Yeah, that's good.
The last one is, a fight is a key to deeper understanding.
I love this one because I think that when people think of like fights or conflict in a relationship, it's like a scary thing or viewed as a bad thing.
Yeah.
But really what it could be when you get out the other side of it is a chance to know your significant other more and to know how to love them deeper.
And know how your relationship's evolving.
And have found that when me and you like really sit down and wrestle through things together, it's so hard in the moment, and I always think like, I don't want to be talking about this right now. But on the other side of it, I feel so connected to you and so excited about our relationship, and I just feel like my love for you grows even deeper. And so I just love that take.
I think it's so important to know that, like, a fight isn't a standalone thing. It's not like, oh, we were fighting or we were in an argument or we're in conflict and we have to resolve that one conflict or fight. It is that, but it also provides more insight. Insight about the person, insight about yourself, insight about your relationship. So it's so important to take the insight that you're gaining from this fight and be like, oh, when I say things that way, or when I use that tone, or when she says this about me, I realize that it triggers this part of me that hasn't been resolved. Or it triggers that part of me that felt very small when my mom would use the same word to scold me or something like that. And there's so many things that, because we're such complex humans, where our sociology, our psychology, and our even physiology almost like intersect as we evolve as a person, and they impact how we see the world. It's like, we're not just taking ourself into a situation, we're taking ourself and all our previous memories, all our previous histories, all our previous conflicts into this relationship. So there might be something that your significant other says that points to an insecurity that developed in grade 5 or when you were 13 years old. And you're able to learn.
You suck at running.
It feels like you just wanted to say that about me.
No, because
I'm trying to work on it.
Did you have a thing when you were like 13 where you practiced running all summer?
But where did that come from in context of this?
Like, is that why you run so much now?
Maybe that's it. But is that like... Anyways, guys, Mariah wanted to say for the last few weeks that I suck at running.
No.
And so I'd like to...
like, he's really good at running, but I'm like, maybe he runs so much now because someone said that to him when he was 13.
Anyways. I forget what I was going to say.
On.
But it's so important for us to get to this place where we're like, okay, when she said that about me, it gave me this data or this insight that pointed to an area of my life that I still need to mature in or develop. Or I notice when I say this to her, she perceives it as more combative than I'm trying to make it sound. So next time I enter into a conversation like that with her, I'm going to change my tone or change my language so that she recognizes that I'm trying to solve this problem together. I'm not pointing to her as the problem.
Yeah, that's really good.
And so those are our thoughts when it comes to conflict management, when it comes to how to get better at conflict, how to do conflict in a way that's helpful for the two of you in a relationship.
How to fight well, fight clean.
I would love to hear if anyone has any other tips for managing conflict, any experiences that have gone well or not so well. Feel free to share those in the comments.
And please don't forget, if you haven't already, to like and subscribe.
Also, if any of these videos are helpful for you and you feel like it might help someone else, make sure to share it because it would be super helpful for us in helping others. It helps us as well.
Okay, talk to you guys next week.
Help me.
Help you.
Help you, help me.
Okay,
That was almost great. That
talk
was
to you
almost
guys
great.
next week.